I'm a quantity surveyor, well, used to be, so it's a good time to bring that in. I did my cadetship at Fletcher Construction. Saw a good side of Fletcher's in the early days, very family-oriented company. Big company with a lot of experience. Did the most iconic projects in New Zealand. So I started my cadetship there. That was the only company I wanted to work for. I guess what drew me to Flamestoppers, sort of saw the other side of Fletcher's towards that big building boom. They picked up a couple, probably grew a bit too quickly. I think their turnover went from the hundreds of millions to billions in a short amount of time. So sort of saw the not so positive side of Fletcher's, which led me to, I think in 2017, was around the time they made their announcement that they were exiting the market. Essentially everyone, I think hundreds of QSs, PMs, all the employees had to, figure out where they wanted to take their career. I decided to, I wanted to get into business. I had no kids at the time. Part of why I got into QSing was I heard they made good business owners. And also I wanted to problem solve. So I found towards the end of my career at Fletcher's, every trade was blowing out. Budgets were blowing out left, right and centre. It's quite a difficult time. Probably the hardest time I saw at Fletcher's was more the 30 years, 40 years guys that spent their lives at Fletcher's wondering what they were going to do with their careers. And I wanted to be part of the solution to, I guess, what was going on. And why I chose Pacifier more specifically was, I guess, every QS didn't have very good things to say about it. And that was more around the cost side and budget blowouts, etc., like some of the questions that were coming our way. So started Flamestoppers into 2017. Started just getting into the market, sort of getting around everyone's projects and trying to win some work. Started tendering. What we found was we were sort of not in line with the market. Found that although we'd try and come early and bring up all these costs, all these things that could go wrong, the QS didn't want to see it. Like, you're over your budget already. So we're like, okay, what do you want to see? We want to see less. So it was actually trying to bring the budget down before we could actually then get on the site and work through the job. 2020, again, we just established ourselves in the market, got a bit of traction, then we all know what happened in 2020. Whole world was shut down. That was a very interesting time. I pride myself on my mentors to help me get through my industry challenges. Unfortunately, none of them had gone through a pandemic before, so I was sort of on my own a bit. So I remember our Zoom meetings in the morning, have the team, 8 a.m. Hey guys, on the Zoom, know exactly what we're doing, hang up, basically go cry in my room. I didn't know what I was doing, So that's just behind the scenes of, I guess, running a company. But yeah, what we did do very well in that, I knew through, I guess, doing my Bachelor of Construction at Unitec, construction economics, I knew that price was going to be a huge factor coming out of recessions, etc. And what we did was analyze all our previous projects and try and isolate why projects went, why budgets would blow out, why variations were caused, etc. So we did that, focused our time on that, which led us to creating Positively Passive. So during that analysis of 15 major projects, we basically just wanted to find out what was the tender price we won the job on, what was the final account value, and what went wrong. So when we analysed that, we wanted to see patterns, trends, and also any opportunities to save costs coming out of those pandemics. So the following summary, this is what we found. We sort of saw when you compare your tender prices with your variation costs in final account value, we saw that basically 80%, so the 47 plus the 33, would have tender prices the same, variation costs the same as tender prices, or double or triple. So basically 80% would double or triple your original cost or original tender value. which is, I've done this presentation to quite a few quantity surveying teams for main contractors, and usually when I'm in the room with them, they're all just nodding. And yep, this is the, I guess, from a cost perspective, some of the challenges we're faced with in pacifier. So usually everyone wants to know why. When we look at the core issues from our perspective, we try to summarize those into key themes. What we found was not building to the pacifier specification. So we're finding the likes of PFIT's doing really well with the spec, providing all this information, but by the time we come to site, we've found that that system isn't necessarily able to be used. An example of that's just core holes. Sometimes, yep, we've got Brine fire collars or drop-in collars spec'd, but the core hole size versus the actual service going through it doesn't actually match. So we go, oh, okay, we're providing this PS3 here. We can't actually install this collar because it's not as per the pacifier, system. So that was one of the key, reasons there. Another one's high-risk areas not identified. So these would be the likes of sort of like, I'd say maybe any high-risk substrates. So I think Jeff mentioned CLT, very limited test results on that. So I'd pick that as a high-risk area. Sometimes just heavily congested areas with structural members, etc., maybe risers. These are all things that, if they're not picked up early as high risk, could potentially cause some cost down the track. Scope gaps, so a lot of scope gaps. So these are like wing backs, these are like even structural or stairwell gap seals. They're not drawn, or some designers like to call it the things that aren't drawn. So there's things like, just gaps, top of blockwork gap seals. These are all these little hidden items that are on the project, but they're behind the scenes, or you're not generally picking those up till the end when it's, that's where those bills are coming from. And then heavily restricted access, so that would be like the risers. So we're trying to do two-way risers, very congested, small areas, but we got to fire rate two sides. So we usually use the term, we need someone with spaghetti arms, very, very popular, probably should be in the level 3, level 4 certificate, long arms, be able to get through, restricted areas. But they're very popular people in our trade. But basically in those costs, that's essentially what we summarize into those 4 main themes. Here's an example where we had a specification for a 3M tuck-in wrap, but then the result on site, the core holes weren't to the spec of that 3M product, and essentially we needed to change that, so we had to fire rate with mortar above, and then we've had to double bat from underside of the com floor, and that's just an additional cost. So that goes from something as low as $50 to a couple hundred, and when you're multiplying that over 400 apartments, it can add up to hundreds of thousands. So it's something very simple that's been specified by a fire engineer, but not meeting not meeting that system guideline, so not building to that spec. Another one here, so castings. So again, we're trying to, with PT slabs, generally want to avoid, the Rio, and they want to put in castings, but across maybe 15 level student accommodation, they're using the same casting size, one size fits all, but then you've got the pipes going through now. I don't know about you, but on the left, I'm pretty sure I could probably fit through that hole, let alone a fire, so that's not, I don't know, Alan would correct me, that's not going to work. So on the right, we've had to, not only did the client pay for those, castings, but now we've got to come up with an engineer judgment, double layer jib patch underneath, oversized collar, because in the test reports, that supplier had tests for oversize and essentially had to pay for that fire rating twice. And again, when you're going over 300, 400 rooms, 500 or even 1,000 pipes, it's all going to add up, so hundreds of thousands again. So going back to, I guess, our key reasons with scope gaps, remedials, etc., we could essentially have, this was one of the potential jobs where we had the tender cost, 220K. sometimes based on a BIM schedule, which is very light. Then we've got scope gaps, which all come up. And then remedials, so jib patching, oversized cores, intubats, patrices, etc., taking that cost to $650,000. And the trouble with having those remedial ones is these are the most awkward conversations, because no one wants to pay for those ones, because they're the ones that come from stuff-ups. You know, the scope gaps, you can pull those up early and you can understand, oh, okay, walk around with the PQS, walk around with the main con. Oh, okay, I know how that came up. But sort of these remedial ones, these are the ones that no one wants to pay for. These are the ones we generally go in at cost, because if the client's basically, well, if you want to work with us again, we're going to pay for cost at those. So we get, gun held to our head and being told we got to shave our costs. So for us, we'd rather try and design those out, try and talk about those early, try and provide a good value up front, because I guess that was some of the things that I personally encountered at Fletcher's. These were these conversations and costs that they're just not sustainable in the industry. So for us, we've tried to design positively passive around taking those out and trying to add value up front. How to set up a pacified project for success. So we try and get involved early before these come about. We try and review all our previous projects that we've done for each client of ours and try and work on spreading that awareness. Some of the jobs we're on now, so City Rail Link, that's a huge one for us. It's all the tunnels plus the 3 stations. Very iconic project, very fortunate to be involved early. We spent maybe a year with the team on them trying to raise potential issues and risks early before we get involved. I like what Alan said about using one supplier, so we actually went to tender with one supplier and we promoted having that technical expertise. So the last thing you want is 3 or 4 and they're not going to buy into the job because, it's like, oh, well, we're only doing a small part. So we've tried to promote to the City Rail Link about having that technical side on site, which they've given us the opportunity to do. So that's another win or a potential, item for success. In terms of early engagement, or other than early engagement, I'd make sure that the fire-rated systems that are specified, we're actually building to those guidelines. So you're going to have to, I think it's in everyone's best interest to read the specification, try and understand those things, and actually get the services contractors to buy in as well, because they're the ones, running different penetrations through. And for example, Sparkies, we can allow for 2 or 3 cable bunches for each room, each typical room. But if the Sparky's putting 10 to 15, then obviously there's going to be an increased cost. So that's why in terms of lump sum fixed price, we struggle to lump sum because we're not in control of the subcontractors. So we're sort of saying, hey, tell us what exactly is going to happen on site, and we'll fix to that. And if it changes, it's not us putting more holes through the wall. It's not us changing the solutions. We're governed by the test reports. We're governed by the fire engineering. So we're just sort of trying to get it compliant at the end, which falls into subcontract education and support. Positively passive. This is our early engagement approach. What we want to try and do is just come into a job like the City Rail Link. We'll try and bring up potential risks. We'll find out what's been designed. We'll then identify potential things that haven't been designed. We'll take the specification and we'll try and summarize it for them. Go, cool, okay, out of this 30-page report from All Proof on these collars, this is the table that you should follow. So we try and build into a bit of education. From that, our thinking as well is back to that curve. So if we can design or we can educate, we can bring everything up early, then when it gets busier towards the end of the job, which every job is, hopefully we're only dealing with maybe 10 or 20% of those challenges that would typically be, dealing with. In terms of best practice, I think this approach is best practice and it goes in line with, what Alan was mentioning and trying to get that education up front. For us, I think coming from a cost perspective or coming from a quantity survey, I think the compliance side of the industry is very strong, developing a lot. Council's on top of it, fire engineers, your specialist subcontractors on top of it. I think there's some work here to follow the contractual side. So, and I'm, a bit biased being a QS, but I think there's some opportunity there to try and work with the main contractors and clients around following contracts. The good thing about early engagement, bringing up those scope gaps early, we can cover them all off with site instructions. So we can tell the story of why this project is, the cost is increasing. I think when we first got involved, or I got involved, it was sort of get all the work done, schedule the rates, and then at the end you got this big bill and no one knows where it came from. And that's just because contractually, I think it was set up that way. But now I think there's a bit of development there. Time savings, it's always going to be a lot of time savings. We want to save hours on site because these costs are blowing up, and usually it's pacifiers, subcontractor, but it's a lot of cost. Like, it's inefficient if we're having to work around tough items and it's taking us a couple hours to install one collar, or we're building bulkheads around every that's actually, to me, it's a bit of a wasted cost. Or we could have just cored the holes correctly, then we install a collar. So these are the things, we want to try and get into early. Once we're on site, we try and have workshops and try and take what we've picked up early, and then even have pacifier inductions. So City Rail Link, hey guys, this is what we need to do. Let's get the subcontractors in a room. I think we all get invited to a lot of coordination meetings, but I think we sit in there for an hour and we may say maybe 2 minutes or 1 minute if we're lucky. It's inefficient. So we say, cool, rather than us come to each one, can we just have a separate pacifier coordination meeting, and we'll bring the agenda and we'll go, cool guys, can we make sure that this is how we're running these services. So services come in, above door templates, we're very pro, samples on site, even, not pushing, but saying, hey, MainCon, maybe you want to NTS these, above door templates to your subcontractors, make sure that they're following them, because that's what we agreed on site, and it's going to occur, hundreds of times. So we try and bring that methodology, even sequencing for risers. Go, guys, this is what we want to do. These are our tolerances. It's not much room. We need minimum separations here. Can you leave the two side walls open? We've got to access two sides. Can we do this for each level? Try and reduce that restricted access, because the moment we're blocked out, most contractors have tags going, we haven't allowed for crawling through your space to get to the site, and it's going to be day works. So we try and bring those up early. Highly repetitive areas, get your services contractor involved, and also your pacifier sub, and try and work through those items. Knowledge value management, so that's what I mentioned towards the end of the job. We always look at what are the things that went well, what were the things that didn't. For us, we know we can't solve, every challenge in the industry. We're not here to. If that was, possible, we wouldn't have variations, and we probably wouldn't have QSs. But last time I checked, there was still a shortage of QSs, so it's going to be an attitude thing. I think it comes with time. Pacifiers in its infancy, but the more we share knowledge, the more we have workshops like this, the more we're willing to come to the table and raise things, the more we're actually going to evolve. So I think, I'm fortunate that a lot of the head offices we've caught up with, they're buying into these types of discussions, and we're keen to spend the next 10 years trying to improve things. I think we've seen it with the councils and the compliance side, and that's coming together. I probably just want to add a bit of cost and contractual side, and that's where we fit in the market. So if we look at a typical tender analysis, essentially our tender rates are quite similar. Not going to get too much difference there. Variation costs, they're generally the same as well. But we sort of try and promote the fact that we'll save you all these, what we can by getting in early and trying to reduce those awkward remedials or stuff-ups. We can save money in the final account. And how it's broken down is we can save about 20% on scope gaps, and that's by just bringing them up early. An example of scope gaps could be just clashes with a structural steel member. I would need to put bulkhead here for a pipe-through floor. Well, can we move the pipe? Oh, okay, well, you can move it. Well, you save the bulkhead. We can't eliminate scope gaps because they're there. They just need to be brought to the attention and found the most efficient way of doing them. But we can try and reduce remediation work. So that's just incorrect. What's the word? Yeah, just stuff ups on site that we could avoid. So we're trying to save money down there on those items. Those are some of our jobs. I won't leave the slide up just in case you guys are on them. But, yeah, that's our company.